Okay. Hi, you guys. Nice to see you back here. It seems like 5 minutes since last weekend, but glad to see you again. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio, and this is Lost Arts Radio Live. I think the sound is okay. I want to make sure I don't run away from the mic. And this is just a 1 hour a week little news review. Obviously, we don't have a chance to cover all the news of the week in detail. That would take more than the whole week, I think. And I always refer people to the really great news broadcast production that I can't mention anymore. It'll get us kicked off immediately, and that won't help you guys. But it starts with I, and I don't think the AI bots are smart enough to follow this. And it's the first part of information, and the second part is wars, and it's demonized all over the place, almost as much as the U.S. president is now. But that's a sign of government seal of approval, actually, if you know how to understand it. As I've said many times, I really believe in guidance from government. It's quite reliable. You can't always rely on them telling the opposite of the truth, but most of the time you can, and you just have to check it, because they could tell you something that's accurate by mistake or for some other nefarious reason. So anyway, that's where you go if, in my opinion, if you want a really incredible, comprehensive 6-day-a-week newscast. And what we do here is we just look at kind of the themes, from the past week, and see what they mean of some of the major news events that are most prominent, that are really affecting all of us right now. And we've had also some big guest appearances on other shows lately, and at least one of those I can't mention either, but if you go to Brighteon.com, which will not be censored, or any of the major platforms that we're still on at the moment, you can see what I'm talking about. Hope you get a chance to see those. They're all up right now. We haven't been kicked off any major platforms, and I'm just trying to prolong that if we can, to reach more of you more easily. But if we disappear, go to Brighteon.com. There's a huge amount of critically important news events this week. I've got some bullet point notes on just a few, and it's many pages here, so I'll just hit the high points of what I can. And I'm going to look at what are the major themes and implications of what's going on during the week, and that way you can get some benefit out of what we share here. And if you want the events listed, as I said, you can go somewhere else. But I should warn you, and somebody last week said, "Oh, your show is just fear porn," and that's a new term that's supposed to be really cool, I think. And you should stop doing that. And so what is fear porn? Well, pornography is to get you all excited sexually if you don't realize how much garbage it is, and it's for that. Eliciting that response in you if you fall for it. So fear porn, I guess, is that you do a show like ours just to make people, instead of all sexually excited, you make them all excited with fear. That's not the point of the show at all. I mean, there's hideous things happening in the world, and we bring out the point that they're all connected, and they're almost all intentional, and they're almost all coming from the top of a very subtle, highly organized power structure. But that has nothing to do with thinking that you should be afraid. That would be the worst response you could have. And in fact, what comes out of the mainstream news and the fake science outlets and the many government agencies that are still corrupted and things like that, that's one of the functions that has is fear, because they know at the top of the power structure anyway, the lower servants aren't too bright, but at the top, they know that if they can keep you terrified, doesn't matter of what, just afraid all the time, that you're weak and you're not going to become self-aware. And that's really important to them. Their biggest fear at the top rulers, the biggest fear is that you'll become aware of who you really are and what you can do, because at that point their game is over. So if you want to know the ulterior motive of this news show, it's to remind you of that, really. That's it. Because otherwise, what good does it do to go through all the horrible things that are happening in the world? And there's a lot of great things too, but I'm talking about the ones that threaten the continued existence of life on this planet. And there are a lot of those, and they're all coordinated. Almost all of them. Excuse me. The only point in that is so that you can say strategically, okay, here's what we're facing, and therefore this is what we could do to turn it around. That's the point. It's the opposite of fear porn. That's stupid if you're going to fall for fear. Fear is optional. You don't need it, but it's good for you to know what your strategic situation is, because then you can make a reasonable plan of a positive way that you're going to deal with it, not just, what the rulers want us to do is just throw up our hands and say, well, everything's hopeless, we should commit suicide, which is really stupid. I mean, if you want to make things harder, commit suicide. Just my suggestion. So I don't think anybody should do that, really. I understand why people do, because it can be really discouraging, let alone terrifying now. But I'm telling you, those are optional emotions. I'm not recommending repressing them. I'm just saying with a deeper understanding, they change. So it's within that context that I'm mentioning some of the things that are happening right now. One of the biggest major themes of stuff that's happening right now is the intensifying campaign to implement globalism all over the planet. And that's talked about a lot. During the week, I spend all of it partly in research and getting ready for these shows, this and the club meeting that follows it. But a lot of them talk about globalism. And the news, the great news production, which is now more than 100 people working together 6 days a week that's presenting the news, are talking all the time about globalism and trying to educate people about it, and that it's not a good thing for anybody or for the biosphere, the environment, the ecosystem. It's not even good for the people that are promoting it, even though they have a twisted reason they think it's good. So I notice a lot of people talking about globalism, but it's like so many other words, it's not always completely understood. And some people do know globalism is to destroy national sovereignty. And recently, the president of the U.S., who's not part of the globalist agenda, that's why they have to get rid of him and or kill him as soon as possible. That's been pushed on all the major social media, New York Times, major newspapers like that. It's really incredible that that's being allowed to suggest that people do bad things like that. But the reason they're so impatient and desperate to get rid of the current president, with all his faults and areas that he is not fully educated in, to say the least, his spirit and his motive to be there is to try to save his country and by extension the rest of the world from annihilation. And you're not supposed to have that motive if you get in as president. You're supposed to be a globalist. So he recently said, no, I'm not a globalist, I'm a nationalist. But he defined globalism incorrectly. People that I really support, they still have flaws and things that they need to upgrade. So do I and all of us. But he defined globalism incorrectly. He said it was you caring about what's good for the globe, in other words, the rest of the world, but maybe not so much for your own country. That's wrong. That's not what globalism means in the way that it's usually going into effect right now in the world. So I thought it might be beneficial for us to talk about what globalism really is, and then how it's manifesting once you understand clearly what it is. And then, all right, what are the solutions? Because globalism is not a good thing. It's horrible. And that's what this news person and the president have said, but it has to be clearly defined so that we understand that. What is globalism? Globalism is, I'm sorry I look down sometimes. I know it's better if I don't have to do that. But I write myself bullet point notes all during the week so that I don't just get this great idea to share with you and then forget all about it. Sorry, but my memory gets better. I won't need notes, so we'll see. In the meantime, it's about a unified political entity replace like one worldwide country, replacing individual nations, and that one political entity that's unified is totally centralized. It's a single authority in control of everything, and they may play at having elections, but it's like the elections in communist countries. They don't mean anything. It's just the party telling you it can be one of these people, and so you can vote for any of the acceptable candidates you want to. And that's coming into America now too, and other countries, and people are realizing that, and they're trying to resist it. And there are some very well-informed people saying that the globalist power structure, which is manifesting as the Democratic Party in America and the corrupt Republicans that are going along with them, they may win all the elections from now on because they've been perfecting the mechanics of stealing elections and just making the machines change, as well as having plenty of dead people vote. The Democratic leaders have been caught on video explaining exactly how they do that. It's not a theory, and all kinds of fraud. But that globalist power structure that would be a centralized authority is also described as a technocracy. Now, techno means technology, and CRACY is like rule by. So it's rule by not the technology itself necessarily, but the people who control it, called technocrats. And Patrick Wood wrote a great book about that I thought was excellent, called Technocracy Rising. You could buy that. Excuse me. And he's got a new book that it's just out. I haven't read yet, but it's probably great as well. In fact, he had a sale on it that I think was ending yesterday or today. Anyway, that's technocracy, and it involves total surveillance, total Agenda 21 compliance. And you really, if you want to understand what's happening in the world, you have to understand Agenda 21, which is now called Agenda 2030. And it's not a conspiracy theory or anything. That term was just invented by CIA after Kennedy was murdered by people inside the establishment, so that you would not realize that there was more than one person involved. It wasn't just this crazy lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, who I remember on the day that Kennedy was killed. I was in school, and I was in high school, and in 63, and anyway, whenever that was, and we were told right away that it was one person. Nobody else was involved. So to make sure that we didn't start thinking that there was anything different than that, the CIA started saying that everybody who thought there was more than one shooter was a conspiracy theorist. And now, anytime you think something that the establishment doesn't want you to think, you're a conspiracy theorist, and that just marginalizes you so that nobody should pay attention. But anyway, the ideal government structure, this unified authority of the globalist government, would be total surveillance of everything you do. It's starting now. You can see cameras on street lights, and you know, it's been exposed that they put microphones and recording data and cameras and things inside modern appliances. And they want to bring in this new wave of the technocracy called the Internet of Things. And the current U.S. president, even though he's not part of the nasty global power structure, in my opinion, I don't think he has any idea. He hasn't shown that he has any idea how bad the Internet of Things would be. And he's just saying, oh, look at all the jobs we're going to bring in with these companies bringing back, which he really is doing, and it's great. But some of those companies and in fact he has said so, are pushing the Internet of Things, and they're going to have lots of jobs connected to that. That's the new level of slavery that's being brought in by AI. And everybody's, according to Agenda 21, is supposed to be pushed into compact cities called human settlements, right? Sounds really kind of cool and liberal and everything, but it's really bad. And it's where the bottom level in these little settlements is business. So you don't have to go anywhere. You can just go right close to where you live. You can work in your business and stop all this nasty freedom of transportation that is destroying the earth now, right? And that's not true. That's just what they say. And it's just a compact settlement. You need to have permission to travel anywhere. Most of the earth is off limits because humans destroy it, right? And it's just for the wild animals, and it can go back to harmony once the humans are removed from it. So your travel rights are removed. Most of the earth becomes a no-go zone for humans, and everything is cashless, wireless society. And the wireless radiation is a serious health damage. It is not a health risk, okay? That's another misuse of deceptive wording. Things like your cell phone and wireless Wi-Fi and cell towers and GMOs and cancer-causing things that are just poured out into the environment every day with government approval. Those are not risks. Those are guaranteed damage. It's like you just have to shake off this deceptive terminology because it's meant to brainwash you, and we have to wake up from the brainwashing if we want to be useful and help heal situation in the world. So that's kind of a glimpse of what it would be like. Total control of food and so-called, well, I say so-called food because it'll all be chemical GMO food, which will be really bad for you to eat. And there won't be anything else in the ideal globalist society. Same with so-called medicine. I put that in quotes also, because medicine now, even just in the U.S. where I'm situated, is killing about 1 million people a year conservatively, and many more in the rest of the world. That'll all be controlled, and you'll have to be up to date on having toxic chemicals injected into you. There's a word for that. It starts with V, okay, and I can't say that either, because we're guaranteed to be knocked off immediately if the bots pick that up. But you know what I'm talking about. You'll have to be up to date on hundreds of different injections, and some of them will be, well, they're all promoted as really wonderful, of course. Some of them will guarantee that you never have any more stress. Isn't that great? Because everybody knows scientifically stress is so terrible, and there won't be any more stress. That means you won't be able to think, because it's composed of organisms that eat the parts of your brain that signal stress so that you'll do something about it. That'll be gone. This is the ultimate single-payer health situation, right? For all the people that don't understand what's so terrible about single-payer healthcare. It's one of the worst things you can do for your health, because this wonderful single payer that the Democrats and socialists and communists and like some of the people who are just elected in the midterm elections think that it's great, everything's free, right? No, nothing's free except the gifts of nature, oxygen and the things that come out of the soil, crops that grow like that if you don't ruin them with chemical fertilizers. And those things are kind of free, and they actually multiply. Charles Walters was a great person who was the editor for a while of Acres USA, a wonderful magazine that's still working, and we've actually had the current editor on one of our Sunday shows. You could look up the archive on lostartsradio.com or Blog Talk Radio. It was really good presentation that he made. But Charles Walters, who I met a couple of times, he's not alive right now on this level. But he explained that the real economics goes right into advanced organic agriculture, because when you put one corn seed in the ground and you don't mess it up with the chemicals like Department of Agriculture is pushing now for our demise, if you don't mess it up and you take care of the soil and make it alive, put the rock dust in and the good organic matter and stuff, one corn seed turns into hundreds. That's a total miracle, which is how all of life works in nature. It's all miracles. It's not what we're told in all the fake science that you need all the poison and everything to fill in the gaps of what nature and God forgot about it. It's all totally miracles, and so are we. And we're not supposed to know that, because if we ever find out what happens with that corn seed happens with us. And that's the biggest fear of the power structure. Anyway, it's the ultimate single-payer, so-called free system. It'll be a constant health disaster, physical and mental. I got to talk faster because I got so much I want to share with you. I'm going to run out of time, but I'm trying to help the understanding of what globalism is and what it's after. Totally chemical agriculture. Forget organic, or if they do have organic, it'll be different chemicals called organic so that you'll be happy. And you won't have any stress anyway, as far as I just explained. GMO everything, including animals, including people that are already going on right now. GMO gene-edited so-called human babies, animals, and mixtures called chimeras, and global enforcers to make sure you're happy and peaceful at all times. And in the beginning, those might be regular army and police owned by the global system, just like EU is proposing to do on a smaller scale now. They'll do this globally. And eventually, though, as fast as possible, they will get rid of human army and police, and they will replace them with robots. And that's already fairly well developed now. And it'll just replace all human military and police forces in the ideal global society. And supercomputers will determine what your work is, what your career is, what food you should eat for your body type, and how artificial you actually are, and with how many cyber parts and stuff, who you should marry, who your mate should be, whether you'll be allowed to procreate, or whether you'll be sterilized for your own good, of course. And all transportation will be driverless vehicles for your safety, and so that you don't go anywhere nasty that you shouldn't go, which is anywhere they don't want you to go. There will be corridors between the human settlement zones, and you may be allowed to go down those corridors. Of course, you can't go off the road, but that's not a problem because your vehicle will be driverless and it won't let you stop anyway. Total social credit control. That means if you still have enough of your brain left to actually think of things to say that are not approved, if you ever say or actually think an unapproved thing, that your social score will get lower. And if you talk to anybody with a lower social score, that will lower your score. It's really an ingenious, perfect Stasi-type way to control society. Everybody will be chipped and injected, just as Aaron Rousseau was talking about. I'm not going to use the V word. I almost fell for that. Few to no people will be able to think, and it'll kind of be a zombie state in most of the people. Most will have autism, has already been predicted, degenerative diseases. Pretty much everybody will have cancer, and almost all work will be done by robots. So since you won't have anything to do, and it'll be so wonderful because you finally be free of that nasty necessity to work, right, that you're not supposed to like, virtual reality will be supplied by our rulers, and that will become your life. Total immersion in the screen, probably at that point by implanted brain chips, and total EMF radiation for all, total mind control, advanced geoengineering, gradually terraforming Earth to a place that normal life can't exist on the way toward total extinction, which is their ultimate goal. And at the very end, the rulers commit suicide after everybody else, thinking that if they do this by the numbers as a major ceremonial sacrifice, which is really how they're doing it. It's not for money. You don't destroy the world if you're after money, okay? Because if you destroy the world, there's no more money. And they're intending to destroy the world. It's not about money. If they're servants at lower levels to make them do the work that the top level rulers want, they invented this thing called, fiat money, where it's like credits that they give you for obeying. But they're not after the money. It's something on a totally different level. And that I acknowledge that's not a pretty picture as an end destination for all of us. And that's the end result of the current meaning of globalism. It's the reason. So the president did not define it correctly. It's way more, but maybe he knows more and he was trying to be really mild. And I hear this thing, that, well, people couldn't handle the full truth because it would make the stock market crash and everybody would get depressed and commit suicide. And I don't think so. For one thing, the depression and suicide rates are off the chart anyway, and they're being caused by the drugs that are supposed to prevent that to a large extent, plus the lack of meaning in jobs that everybody hates because they don't even like what they have to do for money. That's abnormal, and that causes a lot of depression. But as far as the stock market tanking, that's being taken care of by the Federal Reserve right now, which is in the process of crashing the stock market to blame the president to get rid of and or kill him and bring us back into a self-destruct mode for America so we can have that influence on the rest of the world, and they can all self-destruct in their own little countries and eventually join the globalist tyranny. So it's silly to worry about the stock market and use it as an excuse to not tell the truth. And that end picture of the globalist nirvana or, ideal society, you might notice that that's somewhat different than what John Lennon was singing about. And I really like John Lennon's music, a lot of it. And he wrote a song called Imagine. And in one of the lines in that song, imagine no countries. And he's wondering if you can imagine that. And that is a beautiful image, provided that the consciousness all over the world is all beauty and harmony and mutual respect and love. Then you don't need individual countries because you'd have like true paradise or heaven on earth, and it would be great. So I agree with John. We're just a few steps away from that, and we can't do it right at the moment because if you get rid of borders now, there are countries where they want to come in and destroy everything and steal it and kill you, sometimes for religion. There are actual, and I'm not going to mention this religion. I'm telling you, I'm trying to stay on these major platforms for a while because it's easier for more people to find us. But there is a particular religion that you may have heard of that has more than 1 billion people in it now, and some of them actually follow the religion. It's not radical. I've read all 3 of their scriptures, and they say if you don't join and convert to our religion, which is the only one that's right, not only will God hate you, as if God is subject to hate, it's completely sick, but God will hate you if you don't have the right religion, and God wants us to kill you for your own good. And then he can send you to hell after that, also for your own good. It's really bizarre that anybody would believe that, okay? But they do, seriously. And so the globalists thought, wow, what a perfect tool, this belief system, that we can use to destroy all the individual countries in Europe, and then we can be a big step closer to this wonderful global nirvana. This, I'm not thinking of the word I want to. It's a utopia, I guess, is what I was trying to think of. They know it's not utopia. The global rulers think they'll be on top of all these starving slaves who can't think anymore and are all dying and sick. And that's going to be their utopia. It's not the utopia for the people that are dying and sick, right? Because it doesn't feel good to be in that position. But that's exactly where they're going. So the kind of gullible people that think, oh no, borders are racist and all this stuff, and we should just have a normal, loving society where everything's in one country and it's all like, I don't know, what they say, kumbaya or something like that. That's not really practical right now. And if you have a country that has some of those principles, at least attempting to live up to freedom, protection of individual rights, which is the only legitimate reason I know to have a government at all, and to protect your borders, of course, and keep those closed, except for people that are really going to come in and help your country. If you open those up right now, when the world is like it is, it's going to be really bad, and it's going to cause social chaos. What they've seen in Europe, mass crime, rape of thousands of women, carjacking, blocking highways, burning cars. This is because these people in Europe, many of them are doing it for God, and they scream and say that, and you're not supposed to know it. And people who have been trying to expose that have been put in prison, and noticeably one with initials TR that you might know who I'm talking about, and others. So that's why you can't have open edges to your country right now unless you want to commit national suicide, which is exactly what the global rulers hope that you want to do. And they use the criminal, corrupt media like we have all over the US and Europe and many Western countries, and actually many countries, period. I mean, even Eastern countries, most of them have media that's just as bad. It's a threat to humanity. The US president was right that the major media in the US is the enemy of the people, and it absolutely is. That's putting it mildly, I would say, because they are trying to very sophisticatedly, well, that's not a very good word, in a very sophisticated way, they're trying to make the people believe that having no borders would be just fantastic. It would be utopia, and it's not. And I would suggest the president tells the full truth about it. So how are they trying to move forward to it while people are standing up and starting to realize, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture. It might not be a complete utopia for real. And they're just, at that stage of realizing, maybe it's not exactly like we're being told on TV and in the New York Times and all those places. So just in case people start waking up too much, where they actually do something, and I'll tell you what I'm recommending to do if we have time. I think we will, because that's the most important part of what I want to share with you. There's a massive push by the very politely named United Nations, which is one of the biggest criminal organizations on the planet, and a major funder whose name starts with S that might get me kicked off by the bots by mentioning him. You might know what it is. His name has 5 letters in it. And a lot of NGOs and foundations that are working to destroy the current sovereign nation basis of the world political boundaries and change it into globalism with, of course, them in control, which they think is going to be incredible. So Europe was first. About 15 million invaders were brought into Europe, many of them believing that to make God happy, they have to kill everybody that won't join their religion, or anybody that's in their religion that leaves has to also be killed for their own benefit. And 15 million of them have come in so far, but much higher numbers are planned, hundreds of millions. And they figure, oh, this is great. This will be the end of these pesky countries, right? And everybody will beg for global tyranny because it's so bad in what used to be these countries that they need law and order on a massive scale and total surveillance, and everybody will ask for it. One of the themes that the global rulers really like to do, if they can, is get you to ask for your own destruction. So they can say, okay, if you really insist, we'll do these things to you just because we care about you so much. And they're having some success in that, unfortunately, thanks to the media, fake education, and other things like that. So the unelected regional government of the EU that used to be Europe is planning to have an army to squash any resistance to globalism using the religion that I mentioned. And this is now starting in the US, but it's not as much just the religious people coming in to destroy the country. It's also gang members and drug dealers and huge. It seems like the U.S. invasion, which has been going on for a while now, quite a few years, but now they're serious about it. And the entities that I mentioned have funded and set up the logistical support and all the requirements for huge groups to come from the poorest countries and areas of places in Central and South America, Honduras and Venezuela, which used to be rich before communism, and other places like that. People who are trained for months before the invasion starts, and they're trained to hate the United States and also to think that they should have everything free and that everybody in the world should be let into the United States until it's no longer of any interest to anybody because it'll be totally destroyed. And they're thinking that that's good and that's fair and that's humanitarian. It's anti-racist, anti-fascist. It's just wonderful. And the fact that it will destroy a country that's the hope of the rest of the world because it's showing at least a memory of what freedom was about will turn into a hellish place. And then there'll be one step more toward globalism. So the masses coming in from the South into the U.S., they plan to have at least what I saw, 590 million, which is almost double the population of the U.S., so that the U.S. basically won't be there anymore, including the gangs and the drugs and the terrorists, and also a large number of innocent people in the invasion that were taught by the UN representatives and the other groups that are getting them ready in the camps that the U.S. wants them to come because it has all this free stuff to give them to make their lives beautiful, and they won't even have to work. And if they want to work, there's unlimited jobs and all this stuff. Plan is 600 million by 2050. And the media, who's criminally involved in this invasion, shows pictures of kids and mothers who really are innocent victims in most cases, and telling us that they're just spontaneously walking up with the kids in the strollers from their country, thousands of miles or whatever distance it is for them, because they just want a better life. They love freedom and the American way or anything like that. And they're actually carrying South and Central America countries' flags and burning American flags and saying "Down with America." And some of the communists were encouraging them to chant "No wall, no border, no wall, no USA" at all. They're not coming to help the country, you guys. They're invaders, okay? And it's just modern invasion so that you don't have these, ancient warriors with spears and everything charging in on horses. No, they're coming in really nice and saying, "You have room for another 600 million of us, don't you? We're really nice. And we're only like 10% violent criminals, so the rest of us are really great, and we're going to help your country." And the media's job is to make sure you actually fall for that. It would destroy the U.S. like they intend to destroy Europe. And the president's fighting it, but the media is saying that he's a Nazi and he's a racist and he hates immigrants even though he's married to one, and he's married to another one previously. And the corrupt Republicans and almost all the Democrats are working for the globalist against the current president because he's not a member of that group. And as soon as the Democrats get into the House in America, I think it's on January 2nd, they're planning to reverse as much of the progress that's been made toward national sovereignty and prosperity. Special counsel is planning to indict the president for anything he possibly can. It won't have anything to do with Russia. And in fact, the current president is way too hard on Russia, in my opinion. They would have been a great ally, and this was a huge fault of the current president. I hope he can reverse it. But the media is determined to hide all the truth, and the crashing of the American economy has begun by the so-called Federal Reserve that's not federal, it's not part of the government, it's above the law. It's moving to raise interest rates again and again and again and again. They didn't do that at all during the current president, by the way, who was part of the global criminal cartel, but the current president isn't, so they've already raised it like 7 times, and they're planning 5 more, whatever it takes to crash the market, which they've already started, and stop the return of companies that can stay in the country. Any country that resists globalism will be similarly targeted because these central banks, like the so-called Fed, are in every major country now around the world, and their purpose is to suck all the prosperity and the wealth and the freedom out of that country, and they do a really good job of it. So how else are they preparing the ground for globalism? I'm trying to talk fast because our time's going really fast here. Definitely part of it is destroying your health via the medical industry, which is most of the doctors and medical personnel in it are really sincere and, in my opinion, wonderful people who just want to help everybody. But they've been brainwashed to be servants of the drug cartels, the medical drug cartels, and that's what they're doing. most recently the injection cartels too. I almost used the V word. I won't do that. Also the corrupt food industry, the processed food industry, which is really bad for people to eat processed food. Toxic agriculture, the idea of using chemical fertilizers that make the plants grow bigger so you can sell them more and feed the world. That's completely either stupid on the part of the educated people who have memorized all that stuff, but it's not stupid on the part of the people above them, the global rulers. They're doing this so that nobody will be healthy, and if they know if you're not healthy, you can't think clearly. And that affects all of us. And there are things you have to learn, real health information, which is forbidden, that if you learn it and you apply it, you can start reversing all this stuff in you, and then you can affect others. And it gets really interesting. I told you I'm not pessimistic, but you got to know about this kind of stuff, not get all upset about it. That doesn't help you one bit. It just burns up your energy for nothing. You need to know about it strategically. Look at the ridiculous programming that we're being fed to hate each other, to judge other people by what skin color they are. How dumb is that? I mean, the only racist people have very low intelligence. It's in a way not their fault because they've been programmed to believe that. If you want to get them out of it, you got to get out of it first. And then by an example on the energy level of resonance, you can actually make them wake up from it too. And that's a big fear of the rulers, that will stop hating each other. Just drop it. We have work to do, and that gets in the way and that blocks it. That's why it's there. Geoengineering is going on not just to destroy the climate, which is one of its big purposes, to create radical destructive climate change so they can say, look, there's radical destructive climate change. You have to give up all your rights and we'll take care of you really good. That's a big scam. But the climate change that's being created by geoengineering is real. It's not to cover it up. It's to make it as bad as possible. It's not a mistake. It's intentional. It's what they're doing. But it's not just for climate. It's also accelerates forest fires. It makes them explosive. Does all kinds of other things. EMF, microwave radiation, and millimeter wave radiation is intended to implement mind control and extermination of crowds if necessary, other nice things like that. To remove the ability to think via this kind of radiation and bad health in general, by fake education, fake science, programmed entertainment that subconsciously makes you admire people who are the best killers as the heroes. That's not really the best kind of hero, you guys. It's like heroes like that have been in old scriptures and traditions for thousands of years. There's actually better stuff that you can do to help the world and humanity than be a great killer. There really are. I know it's forgotten, but it's still there and it's available. And trying to maximize gender confusion, which we're not allowed to talk about at all, division in general, open borders nonsense, and they're into creating environmental disasters like what happened at Fukushima, but also with pollution and toxic waste and plastic and all kinds of junk like that. And most of the people on the so-called conservative or Republican side, they have a really hard time understanding real environmental issues. Just because the UN and all the big environmental groups have become malicious frauds now doesn't mean that there aren't environmental issues. They're really critical, and everybody should be an environmentalist in the real way, because destroying your own life support system is not a good idea. Okay, in fact, healing it is critical right now if we can still do it. Also by creating economic stress and poverty, which the central bank is doing a great job of now, and other programs are in force for that too. But the central banks are one of the biggest and most nasty criminal organizations on the planet. They're not to make your life better and help you buy a house. They have different motives. And ultimately by spreading fear in everything, because, by terrorism, disease, deadly weather, everything that they could possibly make you afraid of. My point in listing these things is to say, this is really happening. If you respond with fear, you're throwing away all of your potential. If that one thing sinks in, the broadcast will be worthwhile. And I'm working with the same stuff. But I've had some good teachers about fear. It's horrible living under its control. And it's subtle. It's not, if you hear somebody's show and you'd say it's fear porn, that's not why you're afraid. You're afraid because you don't understand that fear is optional. You can drop it whenever you want to. But they want fear to make the public beg for global government and tyranny and to come and save everybody. Anyway, all that's unnecessary. Hate and fear are learned. They're counterproductive. And also to fix things that affect our health. The true harmonic version of agriculture is super productive, makes everything into a health food. It's available now. It doesn't take hundreds of years of research. You could do it. It's like all this other stuff. You could do it right now. It far outperforms chemical fertilizer. Justus von Liebig in Germany earlier in the 1900s made a big mistake coming up with chemical fertilizer. And he realized that, like Pasteur realized his mistake with the germ theory before he died. And it was too late. Nothing could be turned around then. The real health information, not just about food, but about everything, would probably make 98% of the medical industry unnecessary. But the doctors could still have really good work to do instead of hurting people. And I'm not saying the ER doctors and the trauma doctors don't save lives. They're wonderful. But the ones who get everybody on multiple toxic drugs and inject poison into your veins to cure cancer and put you in radiation and all this stupid stuff and have no clue about health, they could learn and they could become teachers and they'd be useful. Also on the energy level, clean and free energy with zero pollution has been available in current times for about 100 years or more, and has been used in previous eras as well, that you're not ever supposed to learn about. Look, if you're interested in that kind of thing, I think one person you could look at is the work of Dr. Stephen Greer. That those energy sources are just being suppressed so that you can be blamed for using dirty energy sources and told, don't use any energy, just live on practically nothing. That's stupid. There's no reason for austerity at all. There's plenty of energy. It's in the 0 point field. And the technology to get to it is quite adequate to do it right now. You can have a little box like that, about that big, that runs your house. And it doesn't cost anything. I mean, once you're using it, and once it starts going, it doesn't stop. That stuff exists now. The people that try to bring it out, they get murdered by agents of government and industry. But that's the real energy policy of America and all the countries right now that I know of. But we have potential to bring these things back. And it's not by getting a petition together and getting yourself killed. That's probably not going to work the best. But there are some secrets that have been kept away from us for a long time of what we really could do. And it's not by going out and fighting these things head to head, although that may be occasionally required. We're not these costumes we're wearing. We're not these conscious bodies. They're amazing. They're incredible. They're way more than medicine will ever tell us in this current time anyway. But they're not who we are. Who you are is formless. It's not even a religion or a science or a belief. It's real. And we're all deeply connected to each other because of it. That's why you treat other people certain ways. It's because, at a deeper level, we're one family of beings, but at a way deeper level than that, we're all one being. And I'm not going to get off on that right now, but it's heavy-duty stuff. And it's the main thing that they never want you to find out, not in theory, but to do it. Change this whole situation. So they want to keep, instead of that, conflict and hatred and division and fear and mind programs, and because they are programs. None of them really has a hold on you unless you allow it. And you can't drop them by force, by just saying, all right, I'm dropping them. You have to become self-aware on a deeper level, and at that point, they can't touch you. That's what this news program is about. I'm just doing it in a way that combines awareness of the horrors that are going on around you at the same time as awareness that you're this being that is so incredible now, not after you die. You're that now. And the main prison that we're in is the prison of not being allowed to recognize that and use it. So if we just stop fighting each other about whose religion or party or anything is right, or whose skin color is better than somebody else, really stupid, you guys. I mean, that makes the global rulers really laugh at us, and start getting back to our real self-awareness. Not only will that solve the problems, and they become easy to solve because you're in a whole different place in consciousness. That's not a philosophy, it's something real. But we'll become far more powerful than the global rulers are, and we won't have to destroy the bad guys. That'll become unnecessary, because in the end, we'll have the power to actually heal them. That's where I'd like to see us go. Not more killing and more conflict and more hating. Hate is always justified, okay? Just because yours is justified too doesn't make it any better. Hate is a frequency. It generates a frequency, and it ruins your life. It enslaves you more than any government could ever do. And it always masks something underneath, which is fear. It's got a horrible frequency. And it's become the basis of many beliefs and many religions, many governments, enforcing their what they want to do to you through fear so that you'll obey because you're terrified not to. It's all fake. There are ways to drop it. So if we ever realize that, which is, we don't have to wait a long time. You don't have to wait till you're old or till you're dead or any. You don't. I mean, this is an incredible opportunity right now. And it would be the end of most of the bad stuff that we're dealing, the whole movement for globalism and enslavement and extinction, which is where they're going. That would all end. But it's not going to come from a need for more research or some global hero is going to do it for you. It's going to come when you figure out it's you. You've been playing a part in a play and reading your lines, and it's never been you. But the you is there, and it's really up to us because of that. And so, as a bottom line, I would say John Lennon is right. Anarchy is normal, but not at the moment. Because if you anarchy is another system, and if you implement that when the consciousness is there to kill you, not from just government, but from many other groups, whole religions, billions of people think that you should be killed if you don't agree with them. It's better to make your situation work where you live, in your own country, in your own community. Be an example of freedom, mutual respect, love, practically no need for rules, because you all understand that the rights don't come from rules. They come from God and from nature. So it doesn't matter if you're born in the U.S. or in any other country where there's total tyranny, your rights are the same. And so if you want to, start on yourself, and then you can do it in your own little community if you've got other people around you that understand that. But don't wait for that. You're so powerful as an individual that if you start just in yourself, you'll start changing everybody else without saying a word. It's called resonance. And eventually we get to a place where what John Lennon was singing about could be a reality, and it would be the only normal thing to do. And it only works if the consciousness on the planet is changed. But since it's not exactly a harmonious consciousness on the planet right now, you've got a place you can make it harmonious and beautiful without waiting for anyone, even if you're living in the middle of tyranny, because you're not a physical being. You're using the body, but that's not you. You're something incredible. And that can be changed starting right now. Just like, speaking of music, Michael Jackson's song Man in the Mirror has deep meaning. You know, it's not just a nice thing to do. It's hidden massive power, not power over people, power to bring them along with you by this energy of resonance. That's real. Tesla was looking into it for electric power that would be free to everybody and stuff like that. But it works on a much deeper level. It's not just for you to run your refrigerator. We're all using it now. It's just that what we're projecting in this frequency that we're not even aware of, like a mini cell tower, which could be positive, is scattered and chaotic in the case of most of us. And so that's the effect we're having on everybody. And by the way, this frequency that's going out of you, it's not, if you had to liken it to any kind of electrical energy, it might be called scalar, which is a whole other level of transmission. It doesn't have a distance limitation. It doesn't travel at the speed of light. It travels at the speed of instantaneously. It's there, not really traveling at all. You're projecting it now, and you're more powerful than any cell tower, and no one is allowed to say this stuff. So I don't know how long we'll be saying it, but use it. You know, everything that you want to do on the outside to help with all the horrors that we talked about, and I listed them because they're really happening, and they deserve your attention, not your fear. No fear. But if you want to contribute to that stuff happening, everything you need is internal, and you can have a massive effect on everything going on the physical level without saying a word. And a lot of activists will be really upset and say, what is this stupid person saying? You know, we need you out there with the petitions and everything. It's fine. Do the petitions. Do the speeches. Do the radio shows like I do, or tell your friends if they're interested. But that's not where the power is. I don't care about critical mass or any of that stuff. It may be on its level, it's real, but it's nothing compared to what you have internally that needs no one else, doesn't even have to be physically visible. It's incredibly powerful. So we're about out of time. I hope you got some maybe interesting or useful ideas out of this thing. I'm obviously starting to go a little bit further out of the box. I hope you don't mind. It's not fear porn, though. So look, if there's anything useful in it, I just hope you'll use it. Go way beyond what I have in mind, and don't ever believe that you're limited. It's something different than that. So remember that tomorrow night, Sunday, is a really interesting show on Blog Talk from Lost Arts Radio by Anthony Patch. I think you'll like it. I know we're within seconds of being out of time. I just want to let you know that I really appreciate you even considering any of this stuff, because to me, you're the hope of the world. I'm not talking collectively. I'm talking to you as an individual. And I know you're not supposed to believe that, and there's plenty of people telling you you can't do anything. I'm just suggesting it's not true. And whenever you feel it's important enough, you can start on this incredible exploration that becomes practical in the physical world. That's what we're doing with planetaryhealingclub.com. If you ever want to find out about that, you're invited, but you're not required to do that. You can do this on your own. It's just that we set up a support system for people who are interested. And I'd love to see you there. I go there every week live, and it's interactive in person. We're really putting these things into use. It's demanding. It's not going to be of any interest to you if you're a spectator, or if you want to go along with the mental programming and just say all the reasons why you can't do anything, or you don't have time, or it's not practical, or I don't want to think about the bad stuff, or you won't like it if that's what you want to be focused on. But if you're one of the few people that's actually ready to see what can physically be done with this, you can meet me there, planetaryhealingclub.com. Otherwise, remember the Sunday show tomorrow. We'll be doing more free videos on the major channels or if not, there on Brighteon, Brightheon, which is a great new non-censored site. And our main site is lostartsradio.com. Thanks for being here again. I really appreciate your company, and I'll see you next time. Have a good week.